Do not answer the third knock. I'm going to tell you a story that still makes me check my door 3 times before I go to sleep. If you're listening to this at night, maybe turn the volume down a little. The sound of knocking tends to linger in people's heads. When I was 19, I moved into a student dorm on the edge of town. It was called Curacao House, a long, 4-story concrete building from the 1970s, squeezed between a small river and an overgrown bamboo grove. The rent was ridiculously cheap. That should have been my first warning. The day I moved in, the sky was gray and low. Cicadas screamed in the trees like broken speakers. My parents helped carry my boxes up to the 3rd floor. There was no elevator, just a narrow stairwell that smelled of old dust and instant noodles. At the entrance, the caretaker, an old man in a faded blue uniform, handed me a set of keys on a metal ring. He had a polite smile, but his eyes were strangely tired, like he hadn't slept properly in years. "Room 313, he said. "The lock is stiff. You need to turn it all the way." He hesitated, then pushed a laminated sheet of paper across the counter. "Also, make sure you read the dorm rules carefully. Especially the last one." My mother laughed. "Is it about drinking? Or bringing girlfriends over?" The caretaker's smile didn't change, but something in his face went blank. "No," he said quietly. "It's about the doors at night." I didn't think much of it at the time. Every dorm has stupid rules. Room 313 was at the very end of the 3rd floor hallway, right before a fire door that was always kept shut. The corridor was long and narrow, lit by ceiling lights that flickered a soft, tired yellow. The floor and walls were all the same dirty beige. You know that kind of place, where every sound echoes a little too much. My room itself was small but acceptable, a single bed, a desk by the window, a metal wardrobe, a tiny balcony facing the bamboo grove. The tatami mats were flattened and stained, and the ceiling had a faint water ring in one corner. After we finished unpacking, my parents said goodbye at the entrance. "You'll be fine," my father said. "It's only 1 year here, then you can move somewhere nicer." My mother touched my arm. "If you ever feel scared, you can always come home. Okay?" I smiled and told her not to worry. At that point, I really didn't understand why she looked so uneasy. It wasn't until that night, when the building grew quiet, that I remembered the laminated dorm rules. There were only 5. 1. No cooking with open flames. 2. No loud music after 10 p.m. 3. Visitors must leave by 9 p.m. 4. Do not prop open the fire doors. 5. After midnight, if anyone knocks on your door 3 times, do not answer. Below the 5th rule, someone had added a sentence in red ballpoint pen. "It will sound like someone you know." I stared at it for a moment, then snorted. Of course. A ghost story. Every old dorm has one. I went to bed around 1 a.m. that first night, lying under the thin blanket, listening to the muffled TV sounds and voices from other rooms fade one by one. Curacao House had thin walls. I could hear showers running, someone laughing on the phone, the distant click of a lighter. Around 2 a.m., the building finally settled into a quiet that was not quite silence. The cicadas outside had stopped, and instead I could hear the faint rustle of bamboo in the wind. Just as I started to drift off, I heard it. Knock. A single, sharp sound on wood. My eyes flew open. I held my breath. A few seconds passed. Then, knock. I sat up, heart suddenly pounding, and looked at the door. The room was almost completely dark, only the digital clock on my desk glowing faint green numbers, 2:13. "Probably someone drunk," I muttered. Some upperclassmen stumbling back to the wrong room. The hallway stayed quiet. I exhaled slowly and lay back down. I waited for the 3rd knock, half amused, half uneasy. It never came. The next morning, in the shared kitchen, I met some of the other residents. There was Sato, a skinny guy with bleached hair who lived in 309, Mai, a quiet girl from 311 who always wore headphones, and June, a 3rd-year student who had been in Curacao House the longest. We introduced ourselves, and when they heard I was in 313, Sato whistled. End room, huh? Brave, he said. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, stirring my instant coffee. June shrugged. Nothing. Just, the end rooms on each floor are unlucky, they say. Especially the ones near the fire doors. I pulled one air cup aside. Have you read the rules? She asked softly. The one about the 3 knocks? She nodded. You heard them already, didn't you? I blinked. How did you know? Everyone does, sooner or later. Sato leaned on the table. It's the dorm's little greeting. June gave him a warning look. Don't scare the new guy. I laughed, but it came out forced. So what? Someone playing a prank? Mai's eyes dropped to the table. It's not a prank, she said. At least, not anymore. She didn't explain further, and I didn't push. Still, that night, when midnight came, I found myself sitting at my desk, pretending to study, while my eyes kept drifting to the door. 12:15. 12:30. 1 o'clock. The hallway outside was quiet. I told myself to stop being stupid, turned off the light, and went to bed. Time in a dorm at night feels strange. It doesn't flow, it stretches. The smallest sound suddenly becomes huge. Around 2:20, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, dragging steps, like someone walking in slippers. They passed my room, continued towards the fire door, and stopped. For a moment, there was only the soft hiss of the wind outside. Then the footsteps came back, stopping right in front of my door. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I stared at the ceiling, holding my breath. A pause. Then, knock. My throat went dry. 5 seconds passed. Knock. The sound was calm, polite, almost gentle. Not like frantic banging, not like drunken pounding. Just asking. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's just someone playing a game, I thought. Someone who knows the rule and wants to mess with the freshmen. My hand crept under my pillow, closing around my phone. I checked the time, 2:23. Another pause. Then a third sound, except it wasn't a knock this time. Something like a fingernail, scraping slowly down the wood. I realized I'd been holding my breath and let it out in a shaky exhale. The scraping stopped right above the lock, as if whoever, or whatever, was outside had placed their hand there. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. The footsteps started again, moving away down the corridor, soft and unhurried. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I cornered June in the kitchen. He was pouring hot water into instant ramen, his hair sticking up in all directions. Hey, I said. What exactly is the story with the knocks? He stared at me for a moment, then sighed. You won't let it go, huh? Not when something scratches at my door at 2 in the morning. He put the electric kettle down and rubbed his face. Okay, he said. I'll tell you what they told me when I moved in. But listen, whether you believe it or not, just follow the rule. Don't open the door after midnight. Not if it's 3 knocks. He spoke quietly, eyes fixed on the steam rising from his cup. About 6 years ago, there was a student living here in 313. Like you. First year, kind of shy. Nobody really noticed him much. One winter, he started complaining about noises at night, knocking, someone walking outside his door. Everyone told him it was just the wind, or old pipes, or whatever. Then one night, people heard him shouting. Something about I said stop and it's not funny anymore. Then there was this heavy bang, like furniture falling over. When the caretaker opened his room the next morning, the guy was gone. The bed was unmade, his clothes were still there, his wallet, his phone. Only the door to the balcony was open. And on the inside of the room door. June's voice trailed off. What? I asked. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. They said there were scratches on the wood. From the inside. Long, deep ones, like someone had dragged their nails down again and again, trying not to open the door but not able to move away from it either. I swallowed. So he disappeared? Never found. Officially, he just ran away. But after that, some students on the floor started hearing knocks on their doors. Always 3. Always after midnight. Sometimes, if they listened carefully, they would hear a voice on the other side. A familiar one. A friend. A girlfriend. A family member. One girl swears she heard her little brother calling her name, even though he was miles away at home. Another guy said it was his ex begging him to open up. No matter what the voice said, it always asked the same thing in the end: "Can I come in?" People who ignored it eventually stopped hearing it. After a few weeks, it would move on to another door. But one second-year student, a guy in 307, decided to prove it was just some creep or a bored senior. One night, the knocks came. 3 times. He checked the peephole, saw nothing, and opened the door anyway. The next morning, he was still there. At least, his body was. June's fingers tightened around the chopsticks. The caretaker found him on the floor by the entrance. His eyes were wide open, like he'd seen something he couldn't understand. There were no marks on him, no signs of violence. They said it was some kind of sudden heart failure. But here's the thing. He looked at me, his own eyes dark. The door was open just a crack. And on the outside, at shoulder height, there were 3 small, round marks. Like something had tapped there, hard enough to dent the wood. The microwave beeped, making both of us jump. June forced a laugh. Anyway, that's the story. Who knows what's true? But since then, we have the rule. After midnight, if someone knocks 3 times, don't answer. Even if it sounds like your own voice. He carried his ramen to the table and slid on his headphones, clearly done with the conversation. I told myself it was just an urban legend, inflated by years of bored students. But that night, as I lay awake listening to the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that Curacao House was waiting. Days passed. Classes began. I settled into a routine: university in the morning, convenience store part-time job in the evening, studying at my desk until late. Soon, the knocks became part of the background of my life, like the hum of the vending machine at the end of the hallway or the distant rumble of the last train. Some nights, I heard them faintly on other doors, 2 or 3 rooms away, then closer, then further. Always 3 times. Always slow and patient. One Thursday, around midterms, I stayed at the library until almost midnight. The campus was nearly empty when I finally biked back, the air cold enough to sting my nose. By the time I reached the dorm, it was 12:20. The lights in the hallway were dimmer than usual, one of them buzzing loudly near the fire door. As I walked towards 313, I saw my standing outside her room, 311, her hand on the doorknob. She looked pale. "Hey," I called softly. "You okay?" She flinched, then forced a smile. "Oh, yeah. I just heard something weird." 3 knocks? She nodded. "On my door. At 12 exactly. I thought it might be you, but when I checked my phone, you weren't online." "So you didn't open?" Her smile faded. "Of course not." We both turned our heads slightly, as if listening to the silence at the same time. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I feel like it's getting closer." She went back inside. I watched her door close, then unlocked my own room. That night, I set an alarm for 2 a.m., just to prove to myself there was nothing to fear. When my phone vibrated on the desk, I sat up, turned off the alarm, and listened. The dorm was completely still. No footsteps. No toilets flushing. No distant TV sounds. Just the faint, shivering whisper of wind in the bamboo outside. Minutes passed. 2:05. 2:10. My eyelids drooped. 2:18. The sound, when it finally came, was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. Knock. My heart snapped awake. I stared at the door, my hands suddenly damp. 5 seconds. Knock. It was exactly the same rhythm as before. The exact same pressure. The sound of bone on wood. I counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. The third knock never came. Instead, my phone lit up in my hand, vibrating with an incoming call. The screen showed a familiar name, Mom. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? For a moment, there was only static. Then my mother's voice, faint and far away. Shoda? Are you awake? I relaxed a little. Yeah. Why are you calling so late? Did something happen? Her voice sounded strange, slower, like she was speaking through water. I had a bad dream, she said. About your room. About a door. I just wanted to hear your voice. Something cold slid down my spine. Mom, it's okay. I'm fine. You're calling from home, right? Silence. Then a soft, almost curious question. Are you sure I'm calling from home? I frowned. What are you talking about? She giggled, a sound that didn't quite match her. Open the door and check. The words came out too smoothly, too perfectly timed. I stared at my door. The peephole was just a dark circle. Mom, I said slowly, what's Dad doing right now? Another pause. The static grew louder, like deep breathing. Your father is sleeping, she replied. He's not important. I am. Don't you trust your mother? Open the door, Shoda. I'm standing right here. And then, right on cue, I heard it. Knock. A third knock. The same sound as before, now perfectly aligned with the voice in my ear. My blood turned to ice. The rule flashed in my mind like a warning sign. After midnight, if anyone knocks on your door 3 times, do not answer. It will sound like someone you know. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. The call had ended. The timer showed midnight. No seconds. As if the call had never truly connected. My hand shook. Slowly, I put the phone down and backed away from the door until my calves hit the bed. Something on the other side moved. Not footsteps this time, but a subtle shift, like someone leaning close, pressing their ear against the door. I could feel its presence, heavy and patient. After a while, a voice seeped through the thin wood. It was not my mother's voice. It wasn't even trying to be anymore. It was flat. Too smooth. Like someone reading from a script without understanding the words. Why won't you open? It asked. I didn't answer. You heard your mother, it continued. She wants to come in. The handle of the door rattled once, gently, then twice, harder. I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall farthest from the entrance, knees drawn up, trying not to make a sound. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the rattling stopped. For a brief, fragile moment, there was nothing. Then, right next to my ear, from the wall behind me, came the faintest of sounds. Tap. 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 3 tiny knocks, from the wrong side of the room. I don't know how long it lasted. I must have fallen into some kind of exhausted trance, because the next thing I remember was sunlight bleeding through the thin curtains and birds chirping outside. The door looked exactly as it always had. No dents, no scratches. For a week after that, there were no knocks at all. Not on my door. Not on anyone's. The dorm grew noisy again. People played music, laughed in the hallway, complained about exams. It was almost easy to believe I'd imagined everything. Then, one rainy evening in November, I didn't show up to class. And the next morning. And the next. The university sent emails. The dorm caretaker knocked on doors, asking if anyone had seen her. Her room, 311, was locked from the inside. Eventually, the police came. They opened the door in the middle of the day. We all pretended not to watch, but every ear on the floor was pressed to the wall, every eye peeking from a barely cracked door. There was no body. No sign of a struggle. Her wallet was there. Her student ID. Her textbooks, open on the desk with sticky notes fluttering in the draft. The balcony door was locked. The curtains were drawn. The only strange thing, and I heard this later from Sato, who swore he saw it with his own eyes, was the state of the inside of her room door. From the floor up to about chest height, the wood was covered in marks. Not claw marks, not random scratches. They were small, round, shallow dents, arranged in neat clusters of 3. Knock, knock, knock. Again and again and again. After that, more people moved out of Curacao House. The university talked about closing it completely, but in the end, they just stopped assigning new students to the top floors. I stayed until the end of the school year. Maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I wanted to prove something. The knocks came back from time to time, wandering up and down the hallway like a bored guest trying different rooms. Sometimes they were faint, distant. Sometimes they were so close I could feel the vibration in the floor. I never answered. Not once. After I graduated, I moved to a newer apartment closer to the city center. Clean white walls, bright LED lights, soundproof windows. I told myself I had left Curacao House, and its rules, behind. For almost a year, I didn't hear anything unusual at night. No knocks, no strange phone calls. Then, one Sunday, around 3 a.m., I woke up from a dream I couldn't remember, my heart racing. The apartment was dark and quiet. I took a sip of water, lay back down, and tried to calm my breathing. That's when I heard it. Not from the front door. Not from the wall. From the headboard of my bed, just centimeters from my skull. Soft, polite, patient. Knock. I froze. Knock. The sound seemed to come from inside the wood itself, as if someone's hand was resting on the other side of reality, feeling for a way through. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message. With shaking hands, I picked it up. It was from an unknown number. No profile picture, no name. Just one line of text. You moved. I knocked anyway. The blood drained from my face. Another message arrived immediately after, as if the sender had been waiting for me to read the first. You don't have to open. Just listen. Right then, at the exact moment the message appeared, a third sound vibrated through the wood. Knock. Slow, deliberate, final. I don't remember what I did after that. Maybe I cried. Maybe I laughed. Maybe I lay perfectly still until sunrise, pretending I was somewhere else. All I know is that the knocks never stopped completely. They became rarer, that's all. Months might pass without anything. I'd start to relax, to think maybe it was over. And then, on some random night, a stormy one, or a perfectly clear one, it doesn't seem to matter, I'll wake up seconds before the first sound. Knock. Sometimes from the wall. Sometimes from the floor under my bed. Once, from inside the wardrobe, where the darkness feels heavier. The second knock always follows, patient and exact. The third is the one that matters. I have never, ever answered it. But lately, the thing on the other side has changed tactics. Sometimes it uses my mother's voice again. Sometimes it sounds like June's, or Sato's, or even Mai's. Last month, though, it tried something new. I was half asleep when I heard it, my own voice, speaking from the door, perfectly clear. Hey, it said, matching my tone, my rhythm. It's me. You don't have to be scared anymore. Just open. It will all stop once you open. For a moment, I almost believed it. Because who do we trust more than ourselves? But the rule is simple. If anyone knocks on your door 3 times after midnight, do not answer. It doesn't matter what voice you hear. It doesn't matter how tired you are, how lonely, how curious. You are not listening to a person. You are listening to something that can only come in if you let it. And now that you've heard my story, now that you know about Curacao House, and the end room, and the patient thing that travels through walls and wires and wood, you need to follow the rule too. Tonight, when you're lying in bed in the dark, maybe with this video still echoing faintly in your head, you might hear it. From your front door. From the window. From the space right behind your pillow. Soft, polite, almost embarrassed to bother you. Knock. A pause. Knock. Another pause. And then, after a long, careful silence, just long enough for you to start wondering if you imagined it. Knock. If that happens, don't say I didn't warn you. Do not answer.